podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
It's a Sunday release for this week's show, and so it's over a week ago. Has the excitement settled down of that fine derby victory?
Nope. Still absolutely magic. Just a really, really, really special moment, that I thought. Where did you watch the game, Ed?
At home on the big telly, yeah, I was in the country, just about, and yeah, it was very good. Emotions, of course, City dominating the first few minutes of the game, and United roaring back into it with the 2 goals, and then City getting back, and it felt like there was a certain sense of inevitability that City would win the game at one point, didn't it? And obviously a fine strike from Van Persie right at the end to snatch it, the best way to secure victory in a derby, I think. I mean, we keep doing that, don't we? But the recriminations and the fallout afterwards at Eastlands have been quite amusing.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that if I could have written a sort of script for that, I would have said, yeah, last minute Van Persie winner, please. And it actually happened. It felt like the stuff of dreams. So let's go back to an hour before the game, and the United team sheet was announced, and sighs of relief all round as Ji-sung Park's name was nowhere to be seen, either literally or metaphorically. This was the opposite of the surrender at Eastlands at the end of last season. Ferguson set out his stall very early on to go for it. We were benefited by the paternal activities of Anders Lindegaard. I'm pretty sure De Gea would have been the keeper anyway, but there was no chance of Lindegaard sneaking in, and from that position out throughout the team, it felt like a really exciting attacking lineup.
Yes, it did. Look, Ferguson could have gone the other way, even without Park Ji-sung, because Giggs and Scholes could have played, Phil Jones could have played in midfield. There were all sorts of options for the tactical tombola to turn up. For some strange reason, maybe the stroke on the other side of Fergie's brain has equalised things out. He actually picked a sensible, balanced attacking side.
You go with the stroke argument, which is perhaps slightly disrespectful to the great man, but I actually think this was the pain of that surrender and the tacit acknowledgement that he'd made a mistake at the back end of last season, and also he probably looked at the options and thought, well, do you know what, we have really struggled to engineer any kind of solidity all season this season, so well, we might as well go for it, because City also vulnerable, they don't have the same aura that they had this time at the back end of last season by any stretch of the imagination. And although, as you say, they did put United under a lot of pressure in the first 15 minutes, I can't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted my exact emotions at that point, which is they were quite glad to see that in a way, because every time we've had these big games and come out of the blocks absolutely raring, in the first 10 minutes we've battered the opposition, we've then really sat back and sunk in, and the game sort of swung away from us. And this was really the other way round, because after that 15-minute period, the game became unrecognisable, and there was a good half an hour leading up to half-time where United just bust it.
Very true, yeah. Coming back to the Ferguson thing, yeah, I'm obviously jesting. I put a piece on the blog this week in one of the very few spare moments I have had over the last week of international travel, praising Ferguson for his kind of gambling instincts. He's taken a decision this season, a very bold one, that United will play attacking creative football in almost every game. I mean, not every game, but almost every game. When he hasn't messed around with the tactics, United have generally played a sort of 4-2-3-1 or variations of which, with a lot of attacking players, and gone for it, and that openness has caused problems at the back, and I think it will continue to cause problems throughout the season, even with Vidic back. But he got his rewards against City. He could definitely have gone the other way, and that's the thing with gambling. The higher the stakes, the bigger the losses, and we'll see when it comes to the knockout stages of Champions League and key games at the back end of the season whether it works out. But for now, loads of praise due to Ferguson for being bold, and as much as we criticise that team against City at Eastlands last April, and rightly so, and actually I think in the mainstream media Ferguson didn't get nearly enough criticism for how cowardly that lineup was. The boldness of his choice this time out got its rewards. Fantastic to see Cleverley in there and all the attacking players basically, and rewarded with some really fine attacking football. 3 goals at the champions, first defeat for City at home in the league for a couple of years. It doesn't get much bigger than that, and great stuff as a result. And to see almost the opposite at City over the past week, whereas United have been buoyed by this victory and City have been arguing amongst themselves. Joe Hart's people clearly briefing the press that Mancini had blamed him, at least in part, for the winning goal, and Nasri's cowardice in diving behind his own players and sort of lazily sticking out a boot. It's all good to see and nicely damaging, I think, for Mancini's men.
So if you take yourself back to the game, that first 15 minutes when City had all that pressure, I actually thought that our defensive unit was extremely effective and they were all really switched on. Johnny Evans, absolute man mountain in that first half. He was everywhere. He stopped everything. And the few times when they had really dangerous opportunities, our defenders were sort of equal to them. There was a real quality there. Aguero had that one mazy run where he sort of bobbled the ball and dribbled through everyone and then put in not such a great shot, which De Gea stopped easily. De Gea excellent against crosses, just dominant in his box. This is slightly extraordinary. And of course he made that wonderful double save before Touré's goal. And United were just, once they got into the game, through that marvellous counter-attack, gorgeous interplay between Van Persie and Ashley Young, the much maligned Ashley Young, who had a very good game indeed, the Eastlands. And then we got the breakthrough from that Rooney shot. And so the first question I have is, do you think that was the shot he was meaning, or do you think it was a bit of a scuff? I thought he meant it myself.
I thought he was aiming in that direction, yeah, and he put it through the player's legs, didn't he? So he just didn't hit it clean, basically, which is fine, He got it where it needed to be. On De Gea, I thought he was excellent, and we'll come on to the Sunderland game, excellent there too. And, I'm not quite sure what it is, but he got dropped for having bad teeth at one point this stage and sat out 5 games. Lindegaard's been dropped, it would appear, because he's now a father. There's a piece by Daniel Taylor in The Guardian a week or so ago, basically arguing this is one of the most indecisive points in Ferguson's career. And I think that's right. I find it barely comprehensible, Ferguson's decision-making over the goalkeeper. I can't explain it at all, because if it was based on form, then you'd make an argument. But it's not at all. He's just rotating at random. I wonder whether he's actually tossing a coin.
He's probably not actually tossing a coin. I mean, the one thing about this debate that is so confusing is that there's such a clear answer. It's just not, there's no mystery to it whatsoever. The answer is play De Gea every game unless he's injured, unless it's, give Lindegaard some cup games and a few games against the lesser teams in the Premier League to keep him happy because he's excellent cover. It is genuinely ridiculous that you would not consider De Gea your unquestionable first choice goalkeeper and you let him make his mistakes that he's going to make because he's a young man and he's learning his trade and he's going to earn you loads more points than he costs you over the course of the season, so you just play him every week. And I really don't get why it's an issue for Ferguson. That's the thing that's most confusing, unless he sort of rates Lindegaard too highly to make him his official second keeper, and he knows that Lindegaard is going to jog on, as soon as if he gets word that that's it, he is United's number 2.
So what? Is he good enough for that to matter?
No, I don't think so.
The thing is, if both players are available for transfer, De Gea will be going to Barcelona or Real Madrid or another top European side, and he'll prove himself to be a top keeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Lindegaard won't. He would be at a mid-ranked Premier League side, If he went to Stoke, he'd probably do all right there. And that's not disrespectful, He's a good player. But if our ambitions is for United to be the best in England and the best in Europe, then I'm not sure he's at that level.
No, and De Gea clearly is, I mean, he's not mistake-free yet, but he's getting closer and closer and closer. 2 excellent games. So, another rank cast goes by, another discussion about the goalkeepers. I think everyone knows what our positions on these are, but I guess every week we get new listeners. So, hello, new listeners. Welcome to the show, and you can expect to hear us talk about this pretty much every week for the rest of the season, unless Ferguson makes the decision that I think he should be making, and I don't understand why he isn't. That's the key thing. Sometimes, when you disagree with someone, you really can see their point of view, and even though you think they're drawing the wrong conclusion, you can see what the arguments that they're balancing up are and why they've got to that point. But with this one, I just don't see it. I don't see the counter argument.
No. So here's a question we don't get asked very often. What is Phil Jones's best position? Oh, I'm kidding. Of course, played it right back against Sunderland.
So that City game, the second goal, another fine goal. United really, really, really on top at that point. And I was just kind of gritting my teeth. Come on, lads, hold on to half-time, because how many times have we seen it where we lose a goal just before half-time and the whole momentum shifts? I think that would have been absolutely crucial in this game. But even though that didn't happen, the momentum definitely did shift, and City, with their ample attacking resources at their disposal, finally broke down our stubborn, resistant defence with some good fortune, a favourable bounce of the ball, but also, just very composed play. Because, when you see sides that are not the very top sides in those situations where you get the double save and there's a goal mouth scramble and then the second ball comes out, it's not that often that ends up going in the back of the net. You quite often see the midfielder that comes out to sky it, or, Tom Cleverley it, as it should perhaps be called.
Yeah, and also that gives you a lesson in defending that kind of second ball, doesn't it? And if you don't do that very well, there are consequences. One of the strange things I thought about that game, because although United did have a period of great play through the middle part of the game, I suppose, one of the characteristics of United's play this season has been retention of possession, and we didn't do that very well against City. We made chances and we broke very well. We had some possession, but it was at 40, I'm recalling this off the top of my head, I think it's 44 or something percent. But actually the retention of the ball was nowhere near as good as in previous games this season. United have averaged over 55% possession, but more importantly over 85% successful pass rates, and it was way lower against City. And in part that was because United were trying to play on the break and playing a few longer balls than normal, but also that City managed to really crank up the pressure in midfield through that sort of middle 60 minutes.
But I find that's sort of strangely reassuring, because I would say that's our best performance this season so far as a team, and City are by far the toughest opposition in the Premier League, and we were at their place, and so they had possession and some of our passing was a little more astray, but I do think that was indicative of the way we were playing, because we weren't trying to play that full possession domination style, which it only works to a limited extent. We're not Barcelona, we don't pass teams to death in that way. Our ball retention's been excellent this season, and long may that continue, sort of thing. But it was good that Plan B was so effective and sort of showed United at their best, really. It was fully determined, much more switched on defensively as a unit. The City goals, you could argue. I think the first goal, defending the second ball which bounced out to Yaya, with that amount of chaos and the double save from De Gea and just the sheer momentum and pressure, it was a very difficult situation to defend. The Zabaleta goal, I agree, there surely should have been somebody pushing out and getting closer to him. That was slightly poor, but as a unit, I thought it was an excellent, even though we conceded 2, it was one of our better defensive performances of the season, no question. And as an attacking force, we looked incredibly potent on the counter-attack, partly because Ashley Young was effective as opposed to massively ineffective, which are his two settings.
Well, he was effective on the break, and he actually did his job defensively, which was important. Actually, if you look back at the heat map of Ashley Young's position, he starts off in a much deeper position than Antonio Valencia on the other side, for example. So, and that's because quite clearly in the game against Reading, he was negligent. And I'm sorry I keep going on about this, but it was shocking, and he did his job properly, And that's where Ashley Young can be effective, when he's an all-round player. Sure, he's a one-trick pony, but he can be effective as a United player, and that was a game in which he was effective.
Yeah, and he actually showed off a few tricks. The interplay with Van Persie for the first goal was just very stylish and lovely, and technically wonderful. And then a lovely ball into Rooney as well. So that was good, nice mixture of stuff. I want to talk about the shape a bit attacking wise, because Valencia's had two games in the last week and played very poorly in both of those games. And I think in the City game there wasn't too much good about Valencia's performance, except that he creates such an effective structure, and no coincidence that our second goal came from work from Valencia, albeit not the final ball from Valencia or the beating the man from Valencia, just literally him running and standing in the right place and making the space for Rafael, because they're such an effective partnership.
Yeah, he gives United balance because, you know where he is. His confidence seems to have gone at the moment. He rarely takes on a player, and when he does, he puts in a very poor cross. Counting them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 poor crosses from Antonio Valencia against City. He actually didn't put in a successful cross, which is a little surprising, I suppose, given that he's made that many attempts, and an awful lot of balls where he's laid it back. He looks like he's going to take on the full-back, and he almost chickens out, and that feels like a confidence thing, doesn't it? Because he's got all the tools to take on players, and if he's not doing it, that's because he's worried about doing it, doesn't have the confidence to do it, and his final product isn't very good at the moment. He's not having a wonderful season, really, which is a shame, because we know there's so much more in there. I would never bracket Antonio Valencia as quote-unquote world-class, because I think there are quite clearly limitations to his game, but when he's in full flow and confident, he's a very, very effective performer for United, and we just want him to be in full flow and confident, and at the moment he's not quite that.
Absolutely, and if anything, it got worse, not better, against Sunderland. It was a weaker opposition and just absolutely terrible decision-making time after time, and just approaching the fullback and stopping and letting the overlap come, and, just being much... there's no fullback in the world that wouldn't rather you stopped and waited for the overlap than ran at him with your full tank-like physique and pace, It's mysterious what's going on with Valencia. He was bad against City and terrible against Sunderland, I think. But against City, he was also vital, paradoxically, because of the as you say, people always know where he's going to be, and he did still cause them problems off the ball, albeit he didn't cause any real problems with the ball. Rooney and Van Persie, it's exciting, Ed. It's really, I've got kind of childlike wonder at them working so well together, and obviously getting on together sort of on and off the pitch. Rooney clearly looks up to Van Persie, and Van Persie's very, I don't know, it's just every inch the United player, isn't he? It's incredible.
He's all kind of class, Van Persie. I mean, he's off the pitch, on the pitch, and at 24 million for the 29-year-old, he's feeling like a bargain at the moment, isn't he? I mean, of course, if he gets injured and his performances deteriorate as he gets older, then he might not do. But right at the moment, it's a fantastic signing. And if only Rooney could find the net a little more often, because he's being a bit wasteful at the moment.
He's just scored three goals in the last 2 games.
I know, but quite clearly he should have had about 7.
Yeah, that's true.
Given the amount of chances he's had. So, yeah, still a bit wasteful. But yeah, as a pair, absolutely fantastic. And it's really important because in wide areas, United are relatively weak at the moment. Obviously, Nani is out of favour, stroke injured, either or. Valencia out of form, and Young, very patchy, although the last 2 games obviously pretty good. So it's important that those 2 are in form. It's great that Cleverley's back as well and playing well. Michael Carrick obviously left the game early against Sunderland, but I think he's had 2 very good games against City and Sunderland as well before leaving the pitch, and so that's good. And Ferguson said this week that people criticise our midfield, but there's some very good players there. There are some very good players when Cleverley's fit and playing well, and when Carrick's fit and playing well. It's when you play 38-year-old Paul Scholes, all the momentum sucked out the game when he came on against Sunderland. 40-year-old Ryan Giggs and a perennially injured Anderson, and then you're into sick boy Fletcher, and so there's no depth there. But yeah, Rooney, Van Persie, excellent. Couple of central midfielders coming into form, and it's been the basis of United's 2 victories in the past week.
Yeah, absolutely. So a word for the way that Carrick and Cleverley performed. Carrick just everywhere, defensively so incredibly important, nicking everything off the toes of City. He sort of spoiled their attacking play often. It was really nice to see, and Cleverley got his reward against Sunderland with a lovely goal, but 2 fine performances in a row from him as well. And that does look to be the partnership of the moment, doesn't it? Last season, Scholes and Carrick. The season before that, anything other than Scholes and Carrick. But this season, we do seem to be in that territory.
I do like Cleverley in that sort of central midfield role rather than further forward. I'm not actually sure he's got everything to be a great player further forward. I think his energy and his ability to recycle possession really, really quickly and pass and move, and he can pass it long, yes, but he's even better when he passes it short and creates angles with his passes. And so I think he could be a really good player in that position. I think he'd be an okay player further forward and no better than that, and definitely not a wide player, so that's good. It still does leave United a bit lightweight in midfield, doesn't it? And then that puts Michael Carrick under pressure, and he was good against City and very good against Sunderland. I don't think he's had his best season for United. I thought he had an excellent season last year, and And I wonder whether that's where Ferguson could augment his squad and, with a sort of bit more of a physical presence in there and something of a defensive-minded player. And I think that would almost complete the package, wouldn't it? And United would be a fine side then.
Is that what your opinion on the subject is, Ed? I didn't realise that.
Yeah. I mean, I like to come up with a different one each week. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we'd conceded the 2, and I think, I don't know how pessimistic United fans have become as a collective, but I certainly thought that I would have been very happy to get out of there at 2-2. It felt like, it felt horrible because also, City have, whether we like to admit this or not, they've made it a feature of their play. It's a distinctive City characteristic at the moment that they come from behind and snatch last-minute winners. This has become a thing that they do, of all the things that we've got that I don't want them to have, that might be the number one. And perhaps the difference between United this season and last season stepped up, and Rooney asked him, "What are you going to do?" And he said, I think I'll have a shot. And he said in the post-match interview, Rooney had said, "Are you going to pass it or shoot?" And I said, "I think I'll have a shot." And then you can see, if you've got any kind of lip-reading ability, that is literally what he said. "I think I'm going to shoot," or something like that. It was beautiful. And then he shot, and Nasri was very poor in the wall indeed, wasn't he? I mean, I think the hiding behind Dzeko thing's been slightly exaggerated, because I think Dzeko steps forward slightly and Nasri sort of finds himself there and reacts really badly by just sticking the leg out and ruining any chance Joe Hart would have had of saving it, sending United fans into absolute raptures and sending City fans off the deep end.
Well, I think if you're a team player, you just take it in the face then, don't you? And obviously Nasri has this reputation of being extremely selfish and having a very poor personality, in that he gets on with very few people. He's routinely hated in the French squad and wherever he plays, because people just don't like him. And his kind of cowardice there, I think he did move behind the wall. He turned his back on the shot, and then he just flicks up a leg, and there's an awful lot of blame there. He could have just taken that in the face and City don't concede the goal. As simple as that. Just stand still, take it. And I think most players would have done that. And actually Tevez got some blame for walking away, although it seems that Joe Hart told him to go away, which is fine. The keeper wants to see it, and Hart's beaten on his own side, so he takes some blame too.
But Van Persie takes a lot of credit, doesn't he?
Hit it very sweetly, very, very clean hit, and obviously the power as well as the deflection takes it into the goal. But if you're Mancini, you're annoyed because that goal is definitely preventable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if you're a United fan, you're undescribably delighted, because it just, I don't know, it felt like an important signifier of some fundamental change at the club. I don't know, I don't want to overstate it, but and unquestionably, you're right, knockout stages of the Champions League, we're still going to be, most likely going to be found wanting. Still a massive Roy Keane-shaped hole in the middle of the side. But apart from that, there is an awful lot right with the United squad at the moment, and one of the reasons that the balance tips towards, good rather than bad, is just the difference that Van Persie makes. As you say, if he gets injured, and he is 29, and he has had a career full of injury, so it's fairly likely to happen at some point. But for now, he just makes us a different team, and it was amazing. There was a wonderful moment where I did think that Rio Ferdinand had punched himself in the face while trying to celebrate, flapping his shirt about, but sadly that was not what had happened, and a horrible City fan had horribly hit him with a coin on the head.
Yeah, as Ferdinand said on Twitter, great shot, what a shot. It was hit him from about 20 yards away, which was a very good shot. Some absolute ridiculousness in the papers. I've got to say, some unbelievably poor journalism to somehow blame Ferdinand for celebrating in front of the City fans when he's quite clearly celebrating in front of his own fans. And even to the point where the Daily Mail basically suggested that players shouldn't be allowed to celebrate goals anymore. Go home, stop watching football. You've got no right to watch football anymore. Just bloody don't read that paper. I've got to say, it's just ridiculous. So if players can't celebrate a goal anymore, what's the point? And then the PFA, Gordon Taylor, comes up and says, let's start putting nets in front of the goals. Yeah, why don't we cage the fans as well? Perhaps we could search all the fans, make sure they don't have any coins or, in fact, any personality before they get into the game. Obviously ridiculous from City fans, but the reaction to that is not, you're not allowed to celebrate a goal and let's cage all the fans in.
No, and you know, there's no holier-than-thou tit-for-tat going on. Craig Bellamy got absolute pelters, didn't he, when he was taking a corner and United fans lobbing the entire contents of their pockets at him.
Yeah. You know what? It can be quite funny when you lob a few things at players. Coins are not funny because it's going to cause serious injury. You know, go do it Barcelona style. Throw a pig's head or something like that, you know? Or oranges. Oranges are a favourite one in Spain, you know? I think that's all right. You're not really going to injure anyone, but coins, not good.
I can't attribute this to anyone because I was tweeted it about 47,000 times in the hours that followed the City game. But typical City fan throwing money at the problem. It's never not funny, that joke, even the 173rd time.
Yes, exactly. Although a 2p coin, which was rather disappointing.
Yeah, Rio said could have been at least been £1. Very classy response from Rio. Obviously, he's good at that nowadays, isn't he? He's pretty great at maintaining his public image. But a very good performance as well, and really everyone in the United side apart from Valencia came out of that game with great credit. Another phenomenal shift from Rafael, and just a potentially season-defining moment, that last minute winner, that the pure Manchester Unitedness of it all.
As you like to say, it's a narrative, isn't it? And I think it could be, by the end of the season, a really defining moment for both clubs, given the reaction of each club afterwards and what's been happening. Interesting quote from Shay Given this week, where he said that Mancini just leaves players out and offers no explanation for it. And it appears he's quite aloof, and I think he's engendering an atmosphere in the Manchester City squad where they blame each other, you know, because he's not taking leadership. And I won't be surprised in the slightest when he goes next summer. I'm surely he will. He has no loyalty to club, and I'm quite sure that even though Sheikh Mansour and the rest of the owners who've tried to create a situation of stability as opposed to Abramovich at Chelsea, they'll lose patience if City fail this season, as it looks like they might.
You know, it's an interesting thing because the whole thing about creating sustainable long-term legacy versus chopping and changing your manager every day is it's a really difficult balance to strike to find the right man to do it. I think there's just no way Mancini's the right man to do it. I was thinking about his presence on the touchline compared to Ferguson, and Mancini makes everything about him. You know, Ferguson's got a pretty substantial ego on him, I think it's fair to say, but he does not express it at the expense of his players. You know, that happens behind the scenes. He lets his ego... The problems that Fergie's ego causes are about fundamental relationships and, you know, all that, like the selling of Yap Stam, that sort of thing, you know, these massive flashpoints. But with Mancini, it's like every game, his reaction to Balotelli's back heel, which didn't come off, of just like petulantly waving his arms and get him off, you know, is properly pathetic. It's like Mario Balotelli is not the one being petulant in that moment. It's the grown-up that's supposed to be running the club that's doing it, and all the kind of, you know, elaborate gesticulations. And, you know, he's really... I'm not surprised that Shay Given said he leaves his players out to dry, because there isn't that sense of collective. There isn't that sense of, you know, the team is more important than me with Mancini. And it's different to Mourinho as well, because Mourinho does it, but like Mourinho like really loves all his players and is very expressive with them and builds them up and forms powerful bonds and is the leader of the gang, but there's definitely a gang there, you know. It's anyway. Right. I just don't think Mancini's a particularly impressive manager, really.
So, look, we've had 45 minutes of chat on the City United derby, and we should probably move on because there was another game this week, although it didn't feel anywhere near as important, did it? Although a nice little bit of tension pre-game, of course, with a reminder that Sunderland fans, after City won the title last season, did the Poznan. That's how small time they are. And so there was a little bit of an edge to this game. I mean, never much of an edge with Sunderland, of course, given that the squad's packed with red rejects and Sunderland aren't very good, and we beat them every time we play them, basically, but nice to get a little bit of revenge, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the gloves might have been off at one point and that Sunderland would have barely been able to walk out of Old Trafford, but that didn't come to pass because Ferguson rightly prioritised the Christmas period over the glory of a 6-0 trouncing when he took off Carrick and brought on Scholes, and everything sort of changed and settled, and it became a much more drab affair in the second half. But the first half performance really did live up to... I mean, it was a bit after the Lord Mayor's show, but I thought that first half was really excellent, Ed.
Some really great attacking play, yeah. I managed to listen to this game on the radio on my iPhone coming back from the airport. and had to watch it again later in order to get a full view of the game. But yeah, excellent attacking play from United in the first half. Really the only thing that kept Sunderland even nearly in it was wastefulness of the players. I mean, Patrice Evra should have buried one, Rooney should have buried one. There are a few other really good chances. If it had been 4 or 5-0 at half-time, that would have been a fair reflection of United's dominance in that opening period. I think I tweeted after seeing the game that United's front six versus Sunderland's back four wasn't even fair. And it really wasn't, you know, and I think really after the game Ferguson expressed his kind of annoyance. Once again, it's becoming a theme, isn't it, that United were being profligate, and I think that's right, because we're still not really much ahead of City in the goal difference, right? And in fact, I think it might be even at the moment, and given that Ferguson's entire strategy this season is to make sure that United are ahead of City in goal difference, whatever the actual results, then you know, he's failing, or we're failing there, and to score enough goals, and this was a real opportunity. And of course, once that hadn't happened, Ferguson took the sensible decision to kind of close the game down and just make sure that key players are fit for the 4 games in 9 days that are coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, points are more important than goal difference, right? That's the, you know, it's all very well to say his strategy is based on scoring as many goals as possible, which it does seem to be. But I think he's realised since we're going to concede so many, that bit of it might not work. So we're just going to have to win all our games instead.
Yeah, someone's finally pointed out the mathematics of that one, hasn't he? You know, yeah, interesting. Okay, so go and score 5,727 goals this season. Yeah, bit of a problem if you concede quite as many.
Young continued his good form. Rooney and Van Persie certainly continued their good form, although, as you say, Rooney was a bit wasteful in front of goal, and it was a slightly less impressive Rooney performance, but Van Persie was magical. The assist getting slightly emotional talking about it. When he beat the two, it was poor defending, but just slid through the 2 Sunderland players in the box and just never looked like they could possibly get the ball off him, knocks it across to Rooney.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not ashamed to say I got a bit of a semi.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, the man crush is full on, and I did pose the question on Twitter, a new little ranter on the way, and it being a boy, whether he should be called Eric or not, because, you know, that's the obvious choice, isn't it? But quite a few people have said Robin.
It's too early, Ed. It's too early for Robin. If the quotes, there was the beautiful made-up quote on Twitter yesterday saying something like Robin van Persie had said, "I'm finally home. I'd like to apologise to Manchester United. I'm sorry I'm late." That's what he said. And if that had been true, if he really had said that, then yeah, Robin would have been the only option for the kid. He'd have had to been lumbered with it. Big Red M suggesting Yap, understandably. I don't think you can pull off Yap. I think that's going to be very difficult in the playground. Eric is the obvious choice. I don't know what you're gonna do.
I think I might call him 7. There you go.
It's great because it's a nod to the great man, but also to George Costanza. It's perfect.
That's right.
So, yeah, very many congratulations, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the Rantcast listeners when I say congratulations to you and Mrs. Rant on the impending birth of young Eric. So the Sunderland game also featured unquestionably one of the single worst pieces of defending I've ever seen from a United as a collective. When the Sunderland goal went in, Fraser Campbell, ex-Red of course, as you might as well just not add ex-Red because if they play for Sunderland they're probably an ex-Red, scored the goal, but he was allowed to do so by the fact that I've never seen 4 players standing in a line switch off when the ball's still in play to that extent, when the ball sort of swings out wide to the left and every single one of them thinks it's going out and their shoulders relax, they start to stroll away as if it's going to be a goal kick, and then one by one the collective consciousness switches back on again, but by that point it's too late and Sunderland have scored.
Yeah, every single moment of that, the fact that no one went out to the right wing to protect the cross from coming in from Larsson, that no one followed up when the cross went long or found its way through the defence, that when they realised the ball hadn't gone out, they all chased the ball like kids in the playground, and it required the simplest of chipped crosses to the back post for Fraser Campbell to basically nod it in on the goal line.
It was like monumentally bad defending, like not just bad defending, but like an art project about the concept of bad defending. And yeah, it was just watching them all switch off, and you're watching it thinking, the ball's still in play. Why are they all acting like the ball's not gone? Oh, Sunderland have scored. You know, it was one of those moments. But fortunately, it was not costly, even though immediately after that he brought Giggs on, and so we had Scholes and Giggs in the centre of midfield just after they'd come back to 3-1. I did have a slightly shaky moment at that point, I must confess.
Talking of Giggs, of course, not sure that little ranter on the way is actually mine, of course, until he comes out. If he comes out black, we'll know it's Ryan's.
I can't work out how bad that is on a scale of 1 to 10. Yeah, of course. Could be a little gigs. But, that's all right. You just take credit for his incredible natural footballing talent there, Ed.
United fans sang about Owen Hargreaves and allowing him to fornicate with their loved ones. What would United fans collectively allow Robin van Persie to do right now?
I really don't want to think about it. I'm not just saying I don't want to think about it. I really, really don't want to think about it. So to avoid thinking about that, we stand 6 points clear at the top of the table and the squad's looking pretty effective. Sir Alex Ferguson does not believe there's any need to increase the depth or strength of the squad. Says there's definitely not going to be any signings in January. You said at the top of the show, is he right to say that? My question is he telling the truth, Ed?
Of course, we don't know that one. Yeah, it's rarely the case, isn't it, when it comes to transfers? It might be that they're just trying to put the scent off some signings. It's well known that United are hunting around for a central defender. So this one has been given out to their network of agents and Jorge Mendes throughout Europe, and that might come up with something. We'll see about that one. I don't think there's much to be gained from buying in another squad defender, though. I mean, in Smalling, Jones and Evans, they have three excellent young players. Evans, I'm not sure you can class him as a young player anymore. And in Ferdinand, he's having a very good season, but still there are mistakes in there. And Vidic, loads and loads of experience. Still loads of question marks there, of course. We don't know how well Vidic will come back. He was pretty poor, I thought, towards the beginning of this season and barely played any football over the last 18 months because of two really serious injuries. And that nature of those injuries could restrict his mobility and pace, as they seem to do in the early part of this season. And of course, Ferdinand's pace is gone. So, I posed the question earlier this year that whether Ferdinand and Vidic could actually play together anymore, because I think it will cause United a bit of a problem. I think they'll end up sitting quite deep, which will have knock-on effects elsewhere throughout the side. So if I had a wish list, and I don't really, but if I had a wish list, it would be for a really top-class central defender and a really top-class defensive midfielder. Of course, that in today's market costs you 50 million, and there's really zero chance of that happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think I would prioritise that destructive force in central midfield over another central defender, because I think Evans is the absolute real deal. That's my feeling about it. I mean, I could be wrong, and I've definitely, my position on this has changed pretty dramatically based on the last season and a half. I definitely wouldn't have been saying this 18 months ago.
So the thing is, in your heart, do you think Evans is as good as Ferdinand and Vidic at their peak?
No, I do. I mean, I don't think he's there yet, but I think he's on the way to being that good. That's what my heart tells me at the moment. I think he's on the way to being United captain. That's because of the head that he's got on his shoulders off the pitch as well, and the general increase of his presence. I mean, I don't think he's there yet, though. And so if that's the case, then if it's about what we've got right now, then yeah, you might be right.
He's not there yet, and I'm not sure I've seen the evidence that he will ever get there. Not that I think Evans is a bad player, and I think he's a very, very fine player, but Ferdinand and Vidic are two of the finest Europe has seen in the last decade. And so anything that's not that is a step backwards. Of course, and look, that's an observation, and it's not necessarily something United can obviously fix. And of course, could go and spunk 30 million on Mats Hummels, and it would be a very good and very sensible signing. I don't see that happening. And I have to say, I don't see a major signing coming in. There's a lot of talk about Herrera, and that may well still happen because it's been bubbling around in the background. And that would be a sort of defensive midfielder type, and that's probably more likely than Strootman, who will go for quite a bit more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see any of those players come to United, but you get the feeling that if he's going to buy one of those types of players, it's not going to be in a January anyway. Although, of course, I always look back at the Vidic and Evra signings when I think about United January signings, and there is that great benefit of signing players in January so that by the beginning of the following season they're fully settled in. But I don't know, it seems like players are more expensive at that time of year, and all that kind of stuff.
And then there's the whole European qualification thing in there. Another Ferguson quote this week, moving on from transfers. Well, Ferguson-related quote. Alexander Butner says that Ferguson loses it so much in the dressing room that he's learnt just to say yes to everything because that's the easiest way of dealing with him, which is a cracking insight into Ferguson, I think. And you can just imagine the new kid there, terrified of Ferguson losing it, just going, yes, boss, yes, absolutely, boss, yes, yes.
Please don't notice I'm clearly not United quality boss. I like Alex Butner a lot, though. He seems like you can see them keeping him around just for the general bonhomie. He seems like a likeable character, doesn't he?
He does seem a likeable character, yes, and shares his Twitter handle with his brother, which is it's kind of weird.
It is weird.
Post pictures of himself with fans all over the world.
Yeah, that's nice. Yes, so I think we should probably move on to some Twitter questions, talking of Twitter. Question from @office_monkey. What was the strangest thing you saw when you were in China, Ed?
Well, they like to cook every part of the animal that we in the West don't eat. Chicken's feet, pig knuckles, brains, various eyeballs, and display it, which is interesting.
Did you go for any of that?
I tried some weird and wonderful stuff, why not?
You're always up for trying new experiences, as Robin van Persie will soon find out. That bearded genius asks, will United Rant do the Bebeto Cradle thing after a particularly successful podcast in the future? I can only hope that is going to happen. I don't know how you do that as an audio feature. Should we try it? Yeah, no, it doesn't work. At Floundering Bear asks, just how buoyed will United be to have Vidic back in the side? Does this mean the beginning of clean sheets? I'm not sure I see any evidence that that's going to happen, Ed. What do you reckon?
No, I don't think so. I think the problem is structural, not necessarily the players. And I'm also not convinced that Vidic is the player he once was.
No, and I'm not sure he's first choice at the moment. I'm pretty sure he's not first choice at the moment because he's not in form and fitness yet. And he has always taken a little while to get back from injury, hasn't he?
And look, he's in his 30s and he's had 2 really serious injuries. I mean, the first one was a triple tear of various ligaments in his knee and then another tear to the meniscus after that. So I don't think there's any way that he can be exactly the same player. That knee will be stiff and swollen and probably will be this morning after yesterday's game, and it will restrict his mobility, his pace, especially over the first 10 yards, and he just won't be quite the same again, And that's not his fault, but he is in his 30s and he's had 2 really bad injuries.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it, and as you say, the problem with clean sheets is the structural problem. At Pieto Full Trades says, Tony V looks depressed. I think I saw his left foot touch the ball against City. Do you think there is a connection? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a Samson and Delilah sort of thing. If the ball touches Tony V's left foot, he is cursed, and he was given the choice as a young man. You can be a top-level footballer, but you can never touch the ball with your left foot, and if you ever do, you've got a 3-game ban.
Maybe it's some kind of Faustian deal he made.
At Tom Tomtard asks, will Chicharito leave United at the end of the season?
Yeah, hard to say, but it wouldn't be a surprise. Thoroughly credible source in the Daily Star this week says that he's off to Atletico Madrid. So, yeah, we can probably take that one with a pinch of salt. But he's not getting a game. I mean, he got a few games and scored a bunch of goals. If that's not enough to get him some playing time, then what is it? His problem, of course, is he's the only one of United's forwards that's not flexible. So he can play in one position only. Everyone else can do more than that. And in Rooney and Van Persie, he's got 2 players ahead of him who are better players and more useful to the side. So it's a tough one. It'd be a real shame to lose him, of course. But he would still probably command a very substantial fee, and that always makes it an option.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense as a replacement for Falcao, doesn't it? There's a certain logic to that transfer. You can see why the Daily Star made it up.
Exactly. So when United are playing Van Persie, Rooney and Falcao next season, then we'll know.
A glorious moment in the City game, actually, when Danny Welbeck came on in the 87th minute, and much has been made of the fact that he nicked the ball, which led to Raphael being sort of fouled for the free kick. And yeah, it was a very bold substitution from Fergie, and not what you'd expect. And we've often talked about, like in the last minutes of a game and you desperately need a goal, who'd you bring on? It was interesting that Fergie did not choose Chicharito in that game, but rather chose to bring on Welbeck for his all-round hustle and bustle. At @WeSum_ says he's worried about Welbeck not getting enough game time in his natural position, and asks if we can please make it all better. I'm not sure we can we?
No, I think there's nothing we can do.
Oh, it's just going to happen. I think you just got to take consolation in the fact that the reason that he's not getting enough game time is because we've got Robin van Persie now, so that's not such a bad thing. And the final question of this week's Rantcast, at Connor J. Donnelly, asks, if you had to compare RVP to a fruit, which fruit would it be and why? I think at the moment it would have to be a mango, because everyone knows the mango is the king of the fruits, and Robin van Persie is the current reigning king of that squad, so he gets to be the mango.
Have you ever tried holding a piece of cut-up mango? It's kind of slippery.
It is, and as many defenders have found, you can't hold on to Robin van Persie. He's slippery. He'll slip through 2 defenders, much like a piece of mango slipping through someone's fingers. Yes, and on that insightful note, maybe we should wrap up this week's show. We've come to you slightly late due to my ridiculous travel schedule, but, hey, when you're an international football scout, what can you do? I wish that's what you were for a living, Ed. That would be brilliant. So, no preview of the Swansea game now, because we're going to do a proper rantcast, which will come out on Friday, right? That's the plan?
That is the plan, and we'll talk about Swansea then. And, of course, that's the beginning of a very busy Christmas programme for United. Games next weekend, I believe, on Boxing Day, the 29th and the 1st. A very crucial period for United, one in which we're 6 points ahead going into it. Ferguson says if we're in the lead coming out at the end of it, we'll be in a very good position for the title. I think given the nature of the games, Swansea, West Brom, Newcastle and another one who I've completely forgotten, there's a very good chance of United coming out of that period with a very healthy and substantial lead indeed.
Also, though, there is a chance of slipping up against all those sides that you mentioned because, Swansea have been very effective. West Brom have been punching way above their weight, and Newcastle always pull something, often bring their A game against us, don't they, as it were? So it's going to be a tricky... Those are not walkover fixtures by any means, although, of course, we would be favourites for all of them.
No, and we should remember what happened against Blackburn last year on Boxing Day, of course. But still, as a Christmas programme, that's one you'd be quite happy with, leading into the FA Cup game on January the 5th, I think, against West Ham.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting times, and we'll be back at the end of the week to have a look forward to all of that.
See you then.
Absolutely. See you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.